both leagues were not thrilled. And you know what, guys? This just in. We actually have exclusive ratings coming in.
Uh-oh.
Check this out. Dominique, your ratings from old school Madden, you were an 82, and this is out of 100, so not bad, sir. Not too shabby.
I saw you in the game, Dom. You already know that.
I wasn't that good a player, but I got a great boost.
You're not bad. You know
being
what,
handsome.
Ryan, the fun doesn't stop here. We also have your ratings. Let's take a look here. Oh, Ryan.
What's the rating?
Out of 100 points.
Give me on the Kings.
You know what?
Give me my rating on the Kings.
Improvement here.
Give me my rating on the Kings.
Yeah, that's the wrong team. The wrong year. That's what that was. The wrong year. You got the wrong one.
There's a mistake here.
I had a talk with Stauffer and Ronnie 2K, those guys about that. Shout out 2K and the development team and the Madden squad, my guys there.
They do a great
These
job.
guys get it so wrong. I used to run a game called The Pro, the Game, the Kid, and the Psychic on New York radio to see who would predict best the outcome of a season. Madden got it right. Like, the video games get it right. Like, when they add it up, and by the end of the year, they'll out-predict everybody.
Most of the time, except with Ryan, they got it wrong. Clearly, they got it wrong with Ryan because that's way too low. Ryan just told me.
You think? Max, what do you think? You think they got it wrong? It was too low?
What is it out of, 1,000?
Out of 100.
Oh, 100?
100.
You got a what? What do you get? What'd you get?
Whatever, if I am, you're about a 1 or a 2. If we're going to put it on a scale, you're about a 1 or a 2.
What did we get? Let me see what he got. What'd you get? Was it a 68? That's a pass, brother. You got, as long as you get better than 65, that's a pass.
That number don't matter. The contracts will matter. You played 15 years. You got that bread. That's all that matters. Good job.
All that matters. Oh, here we go.
Hold on. What was it?
When they get the
68. You passed.
That's
what like my high school
60 out of
GPA.
100.
We had a talk. Hey,
that's all I cared about. And better than 65.
And if anybody has a problem, as Mike Stauffer at 2K Sports, you talk to your ratings. I had a couple talks with Mike Stauffer about that. Come on, Mike.
All right, Ryan. All right, guys, it has been a wild summer for NBA free agency, but some teams, they have risked more than others. So, looking back, which team will regret their free agency decisions the most, you think?
Ready for this one? I got two for you. The Brooklyn Nets and the Golden State Warriors. The Nets had to do it. You have to give KD whatever he wants. Don't hesitate. Flip the town. They did that. KD has to come back as at least 70% of himself to earn that money. There's no guarantee that happens. And I'll give you another one. Klay Thompson with Golden State. They gave him as much money as they possibly could. ACL, people don't think of like an Achilles for good reason. But there are plenty of failure stories when it comes to the ACL and how a guy comes back. We're all rooting for those guys to be most, at least, of the same what they were, but they may not be. And if they're not, they can't earn the money.
So the Nets, you think the Nets had to do it? You said in the same sentence that they had to do it, but they will also regret it. How is that possible?
You have to do it because you have a chance to flip the town right now. $1 for a guy who may not be playing, at that point you regret it.
If this were just about athleticism or guys that use brute force, I would say no. But you're talking about Klay and KD, two of arguably the greatest scorers or shooters that we have ever seen.
Yeah.
If I have a takeaway from NBA free agency, it wasn't about the team, it was about the players. They made their own choices. We saw what Kawhi did bringing Paul George in. Kyrie brought KD over to Brooklyn. I mean, listen, down the line, Jimmy Butler manufactured his way from Minnesota to Philly to the Heat. So, I mean, I can't say enough about the moves and the players this year.
Is there a team that will regret having the players push that on them, or players that will regret the places that they've gone? Because I feel like the Bucks losing, we talked about this a lot last segment. Mirotic, while he didn't live up to his full potential there, he's a great player, and Brogdon is a great 3-and-D. Well, he's better than just a 3-and-D guy on that team. Those are things that players that they lost that they could have kept if they were willing to pay the luxury tax. Those guys will regret that if they get down to the Eastern Conference Finals or down to the NBA Finals and they can't get over the hump. Missing those guys, I think
by the way,
will
Mirotic and Brogdon, both potential all-star type players.
I'll throw this to you and not question your
just let them
ability.
go. It's not even they
no
could have kept
compensation.
them.
If you're going to look at Brogdon, there are questions of health, obviously, that were there. They're going to linger on. It's not about his playing ability. And if you're looking at, Mirotic, Bud is the coach of the year. and Bud chose not to use it.
Well, he was
Coach
hurt, man.
Budenholzer.
He came to the team late, and he was hurt.
He didn't fit in. They don't necessarily need him. He didn't fit.
That's
They
fine.
didn't play him. In the biggest moments, they didn't play him, so why waste the money?
That may be true, but coming to the end of this season, we know it's going to be tight in the East, at least in the finals, and in the finals if they get there. They're going to need a couple more players, and it's possible of all the teams that have made moves, what's so bad about them, while they regret it, it's not that they couldn't get the guys, it's that they didn't want to pay for.
Well, defensively in those moments, they went with Lopez and actually got both Lopez.
But why can't you have you could have
Here's what Lopez brings
Brooke Lopez
to you.
and Mirotic.
You get the shot blocking. He helps Giannis, and then the deep shooting.
How do you replace Brogdon?
It's not either or.
You haven't given me an answer for Brogdon. Brogdon's a big piece missing in a league that's all about
catch and shoot
all about
three guys
wings,
as good as anyone.
A guy to play off of Giannis when Giannis is playing the point type position. They're gonna regret that.
Wesley Matthews is one of the better 3-and-D guys we have in the league.
Is he better than Brogdon?
He's an excellent fit there.
Well,
Brogdon's a better playmaker, but if he's not healthy and you commit to that long-term contract, they had good problems. They had to pick and choose.
Here's what I'm struck by in free agency this year. When you think about the decisions the players made, you mentioned like how they are taking their destiny in their own hands.
Absolutely.
That's a much harder question. What teams might regret who they signed? By the way, the Sixers could regret Tobias Harris giving all that money and what he does, his level as a player, which is good but maybe not great. What about the players themselves? Like, what regrets would they have? I can't find many. Kyrie going to Brooklyn's a power move. KD going there, too, is a power move. Kemba, an excellent fit and replacement for Kyrie. Kawhi going to the Clippers, I love. With Paul George, I love. AD to the Lakers, I love. Where do you find a Conley, I love, going? Like, all the players who were able to exert pressure or else sign with a team seem to make the right choices.
I would say I slept on Jimmy going to the Heat, but they've been in talk with every single star who becomes available. Who knows what they
also, Pat Riley and Jimmy Butler, that's a match.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the one that you could point to that arguably a guy could potentially regret it. Is he's going from, he wants to win a championship. He wants to win a championship. You can't go down to Miami as it's currently constructed and win a championship. I agree that him and Pat Riley are tight, and that's a very perfect cultural fit, but they can't get that second or third star, and they don't have much cap room to make it happen.
This is what Pat Riley did when he first went down to Miami. What could they get? They got Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway. He had his Magic Kareem, but not nearly Magic Kareem, right? But still a version of it. And then he did it again with when he brought in Shaq for Dwayne Wade. Right. And he could try to do some sort of thing again. Jimmy Butler's the best we can do. He's real good. He'll play his heart out for that town and for that team. He and Pat Riley seem like they're on the same page. And even if they're a first round or second round playoff exit for a couple of years, they'll make the kind of impression on that town that the town will remember and look back on fondly. Just because they might not win a championship, they probably won't win a championship.
Still Miami
doesn't mean that they can't make their mark down there. I like that fit too.
Well, on the subject of championships, according to The Athletic, the Houston Rockets and LA Clippers are strongly pursuing Andre Iguodala, who is with the Grizzlies and due $17.2 million in the final year of his contract. Ryan, is Iggy a Hall of Fame player?
I believe so. And the one thing, you can't just judge Iggy for coming off the bench. You got to look at his resume. And it's not just the NBA, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. He was a baller at Arizona. They held the #1 seed there out of Chicago. He took care of business in high school. This guy's a Finals MVP, 3-time NBA champ, 2-time All-Defensive Selection, All-Rookie team. So Iggy has his stripes. Here's the reality. Iggy wasn't necessarily going to be Jordan in the league or one of those star guys. He's been more of a Scottie Pippen and arguably the greatest, the greatest clutch defender that we have ever seen. So he's absolutely a Hall of Famer.
He's hit some big shots, too. But I know you don't think he's going or he deserves to go in.
I wanted to make the reason I think the answer is no is because I was going to make this argument on this show months ago because I thought he was the most unsung hero of this dynasty.
Rather have him take the shot over Steph, right? Rather have him take the shot, but he's not a Hall of Famer. Okay.
He is a clutch player. He's a great defender, and he only made one All-Star team, by the way, one in his entire career. And when you talk to people who coached him, they'll be like, not a Hall of Famer. I'll say this about Iggy, though. This is what I will say. I've seen guys in different sports where I go, I know he's never going to make the Hall of Fame, but I'd rather have him than a lot of Hall of Famers I've seen.
Right.
And Paul O'Neill was like that to me in baseball. I knew he wasn't a Hall of Famer as I've seen on my team. Iggy was the same thing in basketball. He's not going to make the Hall of Fame, I don't think, but I'd rather have him than some guys who were in there.
His resume, I don't think, is as good as I would want it to be for a Hall of Fame player. But Ryan made this point off the top, is it's not the NBA Hall of Fame, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. He's had a long and very impressive career. And I think about the Hall of Fame not necessarily as just measuring up stats. That's not the way that it works. You can get guys with big numbers, doesn't mean you deserve to go in the Hall of Fame. It's about telling the story of the history of the league. And he has been an integral piece to this entire decade and to this era of basketball. He has been the Finals MVP, as we talked about, on that great team. And it's a team that would not have existed, and all the big stars that they've had in and out of there, they would not have had the success that they've had without Andre Iguodala. So that's my argument for putting him in the Hall of Fame, is when I go to the Hall of Fame, I take my kids to the Hall of Fame 20 years from now if I do that, and I'm walking them through the halls. This is a guy who I want to be able to point to.
It's a Hall of Fame, not a Hall of Stats.
I know, right. So this is a guy that I want to point to, and I say, I can't tell this story of the NBA. I can't walk them through the history
and by the way,
without talking about Iguodala's impact.
One thing I will say is when I talk about the Rockets were going to beat the Warriors had they had Chris Paul in that Game 7.
So talk about Iguodala.
Stephen A. will bring up Iguodala wasn't there. Now I'm like, look, if all of your top 3 or 4 players are there at a certain point, but it is telling that without Iguodala they came that close to losing in the conference finals.
I mean, look at this. I mean, arguably, probably at a championship level, the better greatest two-way player we've ever seen. He hit big shots. You can start to talk about him in the Rob Horry light.
Wait, who's the greatest one?
Iguodala. Iguodala as a role player, as a finals championship role player.
Anybody?
Huh?
Role player.
No. You said two-way player.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, one of the greater. But listen,
two-way role player.
We'll say
a two-way role player.
Look on the clutch side. You comparing him with Rob Horry with the shots he's hit, and you were like a nothing. 2 left knees, baby. And then defensively guarding LeBron James, guarding Kawhi, guarding a lot of these guys. So I mean, he's absolutely.
Here's the question for you. The Basketball Hall of Fame is not like the Baseball Hall of Fame, which is harder to get into, or the Football Hall of Fame, which is hardest of all, because there are more players in football. They can't let everyone in, and baseball, second most players. Basketball, the fewest players, so it's easier. Is it a big deal to get into the Basketball Hall of Fame?
It's not the same. It's not even close to being the same.
You said in the morning meeting it wasn't important.
It's not the same. I do not see Hall of Fame and go, oh, wow, this is a Mount Rushmore, a top 50 player. When you talk about football, it's a big, it's got set records, okay? So it's not the same thing, bro.
I think given the lower bar for the Basketball Hall of Fame, I think Iggy passes that bar, and I think it's not because of the resume things that Ryan laid out at the top. I think it's because this story. He is an important character.
But you got guys in the Basketball Hall of Fame with no rings.
Here's the one thing I'll say.
They never led a team to a championship.
We're talking about careers. We're talking about legacies, the J.R. Smith era. It is over in Cleveland. The Cavaliers waived guard J.R. Smith on Monday before his contract for next season was guaranteed. How will you remember J.R. Smith's career?
I believe he's a baller, but to the public perception, he's going to be a guy whose mistakes never got past him. You're going to remember in the NBA Finals, LeBron going, how did you not know the timeout situation? But in all reality, J.R. Smith had a mega superstar type of personality and sacrificed his game to be a 3-and-D guy to go win. He did all the right things.
I love J.R. Smith. When I was a rookie in Denver, J.R. was there for the Nuggets. I remember thinking that J.R. Smith, because he was a guy who could shoot the lights out, he could cut, he could slash, he could dunk. He never quite panned out. He was the type of guy that I thought you might be able to build a team around. We learned later on that maybe some of the other reasons you could not. And so I think his career was somewhat a disappointment. But you're right. Only thing that anyone's going to remember about J.R. Smith, sadly, aside from his shirtless Henny celebrations, Henny soap celebrations, only thing he was going to remember is LeBron going like this.
I'll remember it a little differently. I think J.R.'s real problem was he had everything but the handles to really be a star player. And so he couldn't get his own shot, but he could shoot well. But this is how I'll remember J.R. Smith. And we're talking about Iguodala. At first, Iguodala was the primary scoring option. That was miscast, so he was considered a disappointment. Then he became a role player, and he was considered a great player. J.R. Smith turned himself into the best perimeter defender on a championship team.
Facts.
And they won partly because of that. And forget about all the. I'm going to remember him for that. He made adjustments in his career. He became a valuable player, and he did an unglamorous thing to do.
And it was funny. One of the more humble guys I've ever been around, man. Quiet, humble, soft-spoken, honest.
The stereotype of J.R. Smith, a guy who I had plenty of conversations with, is he's not like smart guy stereotype. He's incredibly smart.